Recently, I was watching a Telugu film called Kanyasulkam. Kanyasulkam literally means bride price. So, in the system, the groom pays the bride's family a sum of money in order to marry the daughter, which is exactly the opposite of what we have today. Kanyasulkam is a play written by Gurajada Apparao around 1892, criticizing this very practice. But then I realized something. My grandmother got married in 1955. Around that, her family had to give dowry, and it was pretty common back then. So naturally, I wondered if bride price was being criticized in 1892, how did dowry become so common just a few decades later? So I started digging around. The first thing I discovered is that India never had one single marriage system. Yeah, diversity. So it makes sense. Different communities followed different customs. Some practiced the bride price system. Some exchanged voluntary marriage gifts. Some communities had the forms of dowry. Already had forms of dowry. It was already in existence, but not very common. In some traditions, the bride received a share of her father's property at the time of marriage, a practice known as Sridhana. Which is very different from today's dowry because this share, whatever the daughter gets, belongs completely to the bride herself. Many societies across the world, including ancient Jewish communities, also had traditions that involved bride price. One of the famous example of dowry system is the example of the marriage between Catherine of Braganza and Charles II of England in 1661, where Charles II of England received 7 islands, so-called the Bombay, as a dowry. So marriage payments were not very unique back then, even now, to be very honest. So what changed? Between the late 1800s and the early 1900s, several social and economic changes reshaped the Indian society. During the British rule, educated men with government jobs like lawyers, teachers, railway officers, civil servants became some of the most desirable grooms. Families began competing to marry their daughters into these families. So this is often described as hypergamy, marrying into a family with higher social and economic status. Changes in how property was passed down, who controlled it, raising social status, and shift towards cash-based economy also plays a role in spreading the dowry across many communities. It wasn't one single event, but it is like many situations influence these things. By the time dowry became very common, by the time many of our grandparents got married, dowry had become most common thing in marriages. And in 1961, the Dowry Prohibition Act was passed because the practice had become a major social problem. What I find very fascinating is the irony. In 1892, Gurajada Apparao wrote Kanyasulkam to criticize families who accepted money to marry off their daughters. A few generations later, many families were paying money just to get their daughters married. The direction of the payment had reversed. But in both systems, marriage had become an economic transaction.